Welcome to the conversation. It's your girl, Miss Moi. And tonight, I'm sitting here with the True King, a very dear friend of mine. And I'm just so proud of you and happy to have you. Welcome, Richard Samuels. How you doing?
I'm doing just fine. I'm in my element at this point because I'm sitting next to my sister here.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
It has. It's been some years since we've seen each other, and it's just so good to see you again.
Likewise. You know, one thing about real relationships, though, it's like it doesn't matter how long it's been. When you link back up, it's no time.
It's like yesterday.
It's like
you
yesterday.
Know what I mean? And flowing and back and forth. It was just like I said. It was just really, really good to see you.
When I thought about the launch of this show, I'm like, man, bro's got a story on him.
Yeah.
He's got to express this to the people because a lot of people know you doing your thing.
Right.
But then for the ones that don't or the ones that need the backstory, here we are.
Hey,
So-
I'm here to give it. You ask and I'll tell.
Yeah, let's have a conversation.
Absolutely.
So let's go back before you got to be the mega star that you are today.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they say.
You done done some things, and we'll get to that. But you in your younger years, what was Richard like as a kid?
I was a pretty decent kid, kind of precocious. I was in and out of the regular trouble, with kids not wanting to listen to their mama.
Oh, okay.
Of course, single parent, raised by a single parent mom, and basically my grandmother. I was the only boy, so I was raised by all women.
Okay.
Which really. For a long time, I had a problem with, because of course that meant my mother was the disciplinarian, and it was just an interesting time,
Okay.
I was pretty decent in school, pretty intelligent, because of course my mom, made sure that my grammar was correct and all of that, She did her thing as a parent, as best she could in terms of making sure that me and my sisters were well educated and ready for the world, And of course, I'm out of New York, the Bronx. That's where I was born and raised. And we stayed there with my grandmother for a while my mom came here to Indianapolis to put down some roots after her and my father separated.
So that's how you got here.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay.
So this was back in oh my goodness, that just reminds me how old I am. I'll be 61.
What?
Yes, big
Listen,
man.
we don't crack, do we?
Okay. Listen. So back to the early years. School was great, but it was always boring for me because, of course, as Tauruses, we're always creative and you got a little intelligence about yourself. You get kind of bored with the regular curriculum that goes on at school. And like I said, I was pretty good at math and English and all of that stuff, and was actually really good at putting words together. Writing is one of my passions as well. But got all the way to, I think I was a junior in high school.
Okay, teenage years.
Yes, and started getting in trouble.
Okay.
Hanging out with the wrong kids, the wrong crowd, not wanting to go to school anymore, all of that. And of course, my mom, she didn't know what to do with me. You know what I mean? She's here, she's trying to raise a young black African American child, by herself, and it was difficult for her. And as I look back on that, of course, I have a lot of regrets about a lot of the things that I took my mom through. But of course, back then we were bumping heads, and me and my mom used to go at it, because she's a strong black woman, and I was a hard-headed young African American young man, you know what I mean? So we used to go at it, and finally got to the point where it was time for me to leave.
Okay.
We were going at it like that. So
how old were you?
I think I was about 14. About 14. When 14, 15, 16 is when it really started turning really bad.
Okay.
I got to be 17 and it got real ugly because now guns were involved.
Okay.
Okay. So I was found over on 34th and Capitol.
Okay.
there's a little park that
Mhm.
used to be there. It used to be right across from where the gas station is now. They put a gas station there. But my girlfriend lived right there. And I had this gun that, I used to carry around with me. I thought, of course, my mom didn't know that I was, packing, you know what I mean? But her mom, my girlfriend's mother, would go to work. She was doing the, I think it was 11 to 7 shift.
Oh,
so
okay.
Overnight, you know what I
Okay.
mean? And so therefore I would sneak over there, and then my girlfriend would let me in the back door, you know what I
Okay.
mean? And I'd hang out, right? So I'm waiting for her mom to leave to go to work, and I'm sitting in the park, and I've got this sawed-off shotgun, okay? And, I'm not thinking nothing, you know what I mean? I'm just out here, I'm out here thugging, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I'm sitting in the park waiting, and all of a sudden I doze off and go to sleep, and I thought I was dreaming, right?
Yeah.
I was kind of dreaming. I was like, why are these people looking at me? Why are these people looking at me? And I opened my eyes, and 2 police officers were there. Somebody had called the police and said, there's a man sitting out here with a gun.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so they came and arrested me. And I was like, no, man, I tried to plead my little case, but it's like, nah, so then they realized I was a juvenile.
Yeah.
So they took me down to the juvenile center. Of course, they called my mom, and it was just an ugly situation. When it was time for me to go to court, what they said was, we can either send you to boys' school, or we can put you in the military. And at that time, you could go in like if you were 17, about to turn 18. And so basically, that was how I got enlisted into the Navy.
Wow.
So I went into the military instead of going to boys' school, thinking that was a reprieve of some kind. And when I got into the Navy, I excelled. Of course, we had my Navy training was in Great Lakes, and I was the RPOC, which is Recruit Petty Officer in Charge. I was the one doing the cadence and all of that. Marching, all that. But I still had issues. I had anger issues. Had gotten into it with some people that were in my group, and I developed a hit list, and I actually wrote out who I was going to hit.
Okay.
And of course, that didn't work out too well for me, because as they did their inspections, they found my list. And they was like, well, what's going on here? And I was like, oh, well, that's, people saying, no, we can't have this. So they demoted me and held me back. I think I had to do like 4 or 5 weeks over again before I graduated. But I still, you couldn't take away from me my academic, my academics. So I excelled. And
so you had a hit list because you was a young gangster.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
I just checking in.
Folks was
making sure
at me, and I was like, okay, I got something for y'all when I get my stuff. Because actually, what I was doing was, I was going as I was going to be a police officer. A military police officer, and we were registering for our. Back then, it was 45s. That they gave us, and I said, yeah, as soon as I get my marksman stuff down, I'm going, I had issues. I'm telling you, I had issues. I'm so glad God put his hand on my shoulder and was like, okay, he'll be all right. Yeah, but there was just so many ups and downs when I was a youngster. In my teenage years, I was just very volatile, very angry. Couldn't understand why me and my father didn't have a great relationship. I got so many different stories about, why my father wasn't in the picture, why this, why that. And when I would go to see him, it was always like a distance thing between us. You know what I mean? He didn't know how to talk to me. I didn't know how to talk to him, which it seems to happen with so many young African-American men and their fathers, is that, there's this barrier of communication, especially if you don't grow up in the household with them.
Right.
You don't know what to say. And then, of course, as a young child, this is your person that's supposed to show you everything about life.
Right.
And so as a kid, you know, of course, back in our day, it was kids are to be seen, not heard.
Right.
You know,
Absolutely.
I mean, it was a whole different thing. We've gone through like 3 or 4 generations now, but you know, the things that I see today just blow me away because like we were like, go over and sit down. Okay? Yeah. And there was no back talk. Right. There was no conversation about it.
Right.
It was like you went over, or else, you know, the frying pan was coming out.
Right.
You know what I mean? Somebody was hitting you with something, you know. But saying all of that, in my teenage years, like I said, it took me to the Navy.
How long were you actually in the Navy?
I was actually in the Navy for about a year and a half.
Did you travel all over?
Oh yes, we went around the Cape of Good Hope. We went on the Med cruise. I was assigned to a destroyer, the U.S. DuPont DD-24. The U.S. DuPont. It was stationed in Norfolk, Virginia.
Okay.
And it was great. I mean, the only problem was I had issues with authority.
Yeah.
You know, people telling me what to do.
Right.
And
stubborn bull.
I was, you know, thinking that, you know, we think we know it all, you know what I mean? And, you know, even at that young age, you know, I really felt like I knew a lot of things and thought that, you know, people were telling me things that they shouldn't have been telling me, you know what I mean? And so I kind of rebelled, and it ended me up in the brig a couple of times, fighting, all of that.
But you were a kid.
Yes, I was a kid.
Were you the youngest amongst your peers, or were there a lot of you that was that age?
You know, interestingly enough, back then, there were only maybe, out of let's say a group of 30, there were only maybe about 7 or 8 of us that were African American.
Okay.
So it was kind of, you know, racially, there was a lot of division.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And separation and cliques, and you know what I mean?
Right.
Things that people are just now beginning to understand. Oh, that's not right. Well, that was what right was back then.
Yeah.
Wrong was right.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, went through that. Decided that I did not like being in the Navy.
Okay.
And so one day when I had come home on leave, I decided I'm not going back.
Okay.
You know, and so I was out on the streets of Indianapolis, you know, running around, pistols, and, you know, acting like, you know, I was all of that, you know, and got in some trouble.
Okay.
Had some warrants for my arrest.
Okay.
Of course, now they're looking for me because they want to take me back to the Navy.
Okay.
As well as the police were looking for me as well.
Okay.
And so, you know, my mom was like, look, you need to turn yourself in, da-da-da. And I was like, no, I'm out of here. I'm going to Chicago. You know what I mean? I'm going to run. I'm going to be good, you know.
Right.
So I went down there, ran into a guy who was not good for me.
Okay.
I'll leave these people nameless.
Okay. They're anonymous today.
Right, absolutely. And so we decided that, of course, you know, we didn't have any money, you know what I mean? We didn't have anywhere to stay, you know what I mean? So we started, the only thing we had was guns. So we started robbing people. You know what I mean? And that was how we kind of maintained ourselves out there in the streets, you know. Unfortunately, you know, one of the robberies went bad. We ended up getting locked up. Now, you have to understand, in Chicago, this is back when, you know, 13s, Disciples, Vice Lords, El Rookins, you know, all gangs, of that, you know, the gangs, right? And so gangs ran the jails.
Okay. Because
not only were there inmates who were in gangs, some of the guards were gang members.
Oh wow!
Okay. In Chicago, it was
tough. Okay.
Yeah. So, where was it? I was trying to think of the address. California Street, and it was on where Cook County Jail. So in Cook County Jail, it was rough.
Yeah.
That was probably the worst jail time that I've ever done. Of course,
And
it was
around that time, how old were you? Were
19,
you 20? Okay.
About 19, getting ready to be 20.
Okay. Okay.
And I'm in here and I'm unaffiliated.
Okay.
Okay, so when you go to jail and you're not affiliated,
Meaning
a gang member. I'm
Okay.
not. I don't belong to a gang.
Anybody.
Right.
Okay.
To any
Okay.
gang. And so when I went, I'm like, okay, I don't care nothing about y'all little gang stuff. I ain't got nothing to do with what y'all doing. Y'all leave me alone. I'm gonna leave y'all alone, right? But that's not how it works in jail. Okay. So when you go in, you are kind of like a newbie, you know what I mean? And what they used to call us was neutrons, because we're neutral. We didn't have any affiliation.
Right.
And so there's a hierarchy in jail that a lot of people don't understand, especially when you have certain gangs that control certain blocks.
Okay.
Okay.
On the outside.
On the inside.
On the inside.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
On the inside, it's much more strict than it is on the streets.
Okay. Okay.
You know, because you have to be, because everything inside is like a microcosm of what happens out here.
Okay.
Okay. And so it's more intense.
Okay.
So they had captains and lieutenants, and these were gang members that had these positions. I'm not talking about guards. I'm talking about the gang members had captain status, lieutenant status, that type of thing. So here I am in Illinois. So I guess I kind of swarmed over how I got to jail, where we were robbing someone and I shot someone.
Okay.
Okay, and so that's why they locked us up and da da da. So I'm in Cook County Jail, and it was really ugly. It was chow time, and there they rolled the food in on a cart, and the people who are inside the cell block are the people who pass out the food.
Okay.
So these are the gang members that are passing out the food. I didn't know nothing about none of that.
Right.
I seen food come in. I was hungry.
Right.
So I was like,
Oh,
the
God,
food
what'd
is
you
here.
do?
So I jump up and get me, and they had these metal trays in metal. So I grabbed me a tray and I'm like, I'm gonna give me some food, And so there was this old guy, and he was saying, young blood, hey man, hold on, man, you gotta wait. I'm like, wait for what? Got me a tray, I'm going to eat, right?
Yeah.
So I get up in line, and I didn't realize that, like the people that ran the block
They
went
went
first.
Okay.
Okay.
There's an order to everything.
It was a pecking order to everything.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, I'm in line, and somebody was like, hey man, you need to get out of line. You ain't part of this, woo woo. And I was like, man, I ain't standing with you. Listen, I'm hungry, right?
Okay.
So I get up there, and the guy was like, hey man, we can't serve you. And I was like, what you mean you can't serve me?
Right.
I said, man, you ain't part of us. You got to, step to the end of the line, wait till everybody da-da-da. And they was trying to explain to me.
Yeah.
Of course, I was young and aggressive and, mad at the world already anyway, on my way to the penitentiary.
Yeah.
I really didn't too much care about too much. And I was like, no, bro, I'm not going nowhere. And he's like, oh, no, bro, you got to
you
got to
have
go.
to go.
Right.
Yeah.
This ain't we ain't asking you.
Yeah.
You got to go. And I was like, well, man, the food right here, since I'm right here, man, come on, go on and throw something on my plate, right? And they was like, man, what part of no did you not understand? And so now I'm trying not to cuss on the show, but they start talking real crazy to me, right?
Because now they're no longer explaining.
Exactly. Now it's like, get out the line, right? So I got this metal tray in my hand, okay? And I'm mad and I'm hungry, okay? And so I slapped dude with the tray.
Okay.
Oh, why I do that?
Why did you do that?
Because I was young and didn't know no better. And so, I ended up 12 folks pounding on me. You know what I mean? And when I say 12, that was just what I really can kind of think it was, but it was probably more than that. They beat me. They beat me down, right? They beat me so bad I had to go to the hospital. So somebody say, hey man, y'all got to come get dude. He's fucked up. Excuse me. I'm sorry. He's all very messed up. I'm over the corner bleeding and stuff. I'm telling you, they did a number on me, right? So I go to the hospital. I believe it was my left shoulder was in a sling. I was like messed up.
Yeah.
They kept me overnight. When, of course, I'm in jail, so they really don't care too much.
Yeah.
They put me back in the very same block. Okay. And when I came back, it was like, we told you,
right.
da da da,
So now you're being taunted.
Right. And so now the guy that was in charge, that was running the block, from what I understood from his other underlings, I was summoned to, the guy that was in charge. And so back in the back, he had his, cell all hooked up to where, it was all nice and whatever. And he was like, man, what's wrong with you, bro?
Yeah.
And I was like, what are you talking about, man? And I can, I'm barely seeing out of this eye. I'm swole all up, what I mean? I'm hurting, And he was like, man, what's wrong with you, man? They from what I understand, my people's told you they try to explain to you, but you was acting like you had, and so this is what we do here, da 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 da. And I'm looking at this dude, and I'm looking at, all these guys that's around him, because he had like 2, 3 over here, 2, 3 over here. He's sitting down on the bunk, you know what I mean? And they done brought me back there and I'm thinking like, who's this? You know what I mean?
You
and
still
so,
ain't got it.
I still ain't getting it, right? So I'm like, who do you think he is, And so he's telling me, he's like, look, man, we ain't trying to hurt you, man, because, we understood that you really didn't know what was going on. But you got to understand that this is how it go here.
Right.
And I was like, And he said, you got that? And I just looked at it, He said, you acting like you don't understand what I'm saying. And I said, okay. And he's like, no, that's not what I'm trying to hear.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Right.
And I hit him.
The man.
Yeah.
With the hooked up.
Yeah.
The lead dude.
Yes. I hit him.
Why did
I do that? Because I was young. I was a knucklehead. I had a bad temper. Y'all had already beat me up. Right. You know what I mean? And I was like, because I'm looking at some of the guys that had jumped on me, right? And I was like, I said, if I don't do nothing else, I'm going to give me a good one this time. And I cracked him. I cracked him good. Oh. Have you ever seen one of those scrub brushes, old-timey scrub brushes, where they're a point, and then they curve in, and then they come down to another point where you can grab it, and it's a scrub brush. Yeah. One of the guys took one of those, and they tried to open that's where all the scars on the back of my head, they tried to open my brain up with that thing. Of course, I was beaten again. And the police came, got me out of there, and this time they took me to the hospital, and they ended up sending me back to a different block. Okay. With a different gang.
Jail though.
Same jail. Cook County Jail.
Okay.
But you had disciples, vice lords, El Rookins, all kinds of different. And so they put me in a different block this time. I'm not, as you notice, I'm not naming which gang
I'm paying attention. I got you.
Right.
Yeah.
So because I've learned. I've learned that there's just some things that you don't say.
Yeah.
So they put me in another block, and when I went in, I'm thinking, okay, here we go again. Yeah. But I'm, when you're young, you're resilient. You know what I mean? And so, I'm like, okay, well, here's some new stuff. I don't know what I'm getting into. Yeah. The one thing that I will never forget is after they moved me, I had a court date. And of course, my mom had to come up from Indianapolis. Her and my sister had come up to see what was going to happen. And I will never forget when I walked out from the holding cell, I heard somebody scream. And didn't realize it until after the fact that it was my mom. Because I looked like the Elephant Man. Yeah. You know what I mean? I had been really, truly beaten, beyond recognition. When they say beyond recognition, I'm talking about, lumps and bumps and everything, and, my mom knows me like no one else does. Yeah. And she know that it's gonna take more than you beating him up. You dealing with something different right here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so, you know, of course, I did the best that I could to reassure her that I was okay. But of course, you know, you can't reassure a mom when she sees you know, something like that.
Right.
And of course, there was nothing that she could do because, of course, she couldn't get me out. I had already done what I had done.
Yeah.
I was on my way to prison. And so after that, when I was in the other block, the guys were like, "Hey, man, you know, we heard you.
I was going to ask you the word get around.
We heard you laid hands on dude."
Yeah.
I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, man, you know, you need to be hooking up with us, cause you know, anybody that do that, anybody that do that, boy, you got to be. We want you to be a soldier, you know, da da da." So they trying to recruit me, and I'm like, but I realized that I was in a safer environment now, based upon what I had gone through.
Yeah.
Because, like you say, they were rivaling gangs, and so basically, I was kind of cool because of what I had done over here, even though I got banged up, I was still, you know, I had developed a little reputation, you know.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I stayed there I stayed in Cook County for, probably maybe 8 months fighting the case. They ended up giving me about 6 years, I think. And so they sent me to a place, well, of course, RDC at that time, like RDC here, in Illinois is something different. It was called Joliet. Joliet was a prison, and that's where the RDC was for, you know, when you go from the jail, you go to get processed. You went to Joliet, and then they had a choice of going to Stateville or Pontiac. They ended up sending me to Pontiac, and that's where you see these old movies where people are putting phone books and they taping them around themselves like bulletproof vests so that you wouldn't get stabbed because everybody had a knife. Everybody, it was very violent. I went through a lot because when I got to Pontiac, who was there? The very people that I had hit, the very people that had jumped on me, you know, all the factions were there. And so, you know, somebody had told me, say, "Hey, man, they coming at you, bro. Child time, so, you know, you need to be ready." I'm like, "What are you talking about? You know, I just got here."
You still didn't get it?
Right. You know, I was like, you know, what?
I got it.
Like, "Hey, man, you know, dude, you know, they done put the word out, man. You know, they retaliate. They get right, you know." So I was like, okay. You know, so that's where my prison time began, and it got ugly.
Okay.
I stabbed several people. There was just a lot of stuff that happened. Whereas I had to become this different person, where I began to get it that violence was the only answer for me in this type of environment, in this jail prison environment. So I basically intentionally lost a screw. You know what I mean? And became, okay, this is what y'all want? Y'all don't understand. Y'all got the right one. You know what I mean? And listen, I'm talking about, I was cool. I mean, cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, I'm telling you. That was my first bit. I ended up getting out.
And that was 6 years?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I ended up doing probably 5 of the 6. But I was in education, you know, doing stuff and got a little time cut.
Because you're still smart. You just a gangster.
Exactly.
Okay.
You know, just crazy. That's what they was. It's like, he ain't a gangster. He's just off the chain, you know. Because I would do things that would surprise people. Like, I would just go up and I just hit folks. You know what I mean? It was just like, you know, what's going on? Because, see, sometimes when...
I'm seeing
there was a method to my madness sometimes, where like when I know that, you know, y'all coming for me, okay, so I'm getting ready to bang somebody up, you know what I mean? Because at least then I know that, you know, I'll get locked up.
Oh,
see what I'm
so
saying?
then I
And
can
that's
avoid...
exactly.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? So I was doing a lot of, because you gotta understand. You
on.
also have to understand that I was by myself.
Right.
And that's one thing that I've always been a loner. I'm not the guy that I ain't got a bunch of male friends. I don't, you know what I mean? I don't hang out with a bunch of folks, nothing like that. You know what I mean? So it was just real difficult. for me during that time in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And that, like I said, that was my first bit.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what graduated me to these other times that I ended up going to prison.
So when you got out after doing the 5,
so I'm thinking, okay, I'm not trying to go back to prison.
Right.
So I'm trying to, get out here. I got my GED. I remember succinctly that was when Goodwill was doing, allowing you to get your GED. You know, people coming reentry. It wasn't called reentry back then. It was called people coming home from prison. I got my GED. I was trying to get jobs. People was closing doors in my face. There was no such thing as a reentry program and all of that. So basically, I was left to fend for myself to get a job, that type of thing. Job didn't work out for me, so I was in the streets again. And one thing that I did know was robbing, stealing, and hitting folks. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of what.
So you went back into survival mode.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And was in survival mode for a long time.
So once you got home and you had to go back into that survival mentality, where did that take you? Did it take you back to prison?
Yes, it did.
And if so, how many times?
5 times. So
after this situation.
So
wow.
Well, including this situation.
Okay.
So after this situation, I ended up getting a 20-year sentence. I ended up doing 8 years, got a time cut, got out, stayed out for about 3 or 4 months, ended up going back to prison, new case. I ended up in Westville then, got out, stayed out about a month, went back to prison. So like I said, I got a 20 and did about 8 of that.
Yeah.
Then I think I got a 10 and did about 5 of that. I ended up with, altogether, when I stopped going to prison, I had ended up doing 26 years.
Being incarcerated for that long, on and off, did you find comfort more there or out here?
I found more comfort there because basically, and that's one of the things that I tell people all the time, is that the worst thing that could have happened to me happened to me. Because I was in survival mode, I became fearless.
Okay.
This is what I see in some of our youngsters today. I became fearless because I wanted everyone to know that I wasn't to be messed with.
Right.
And so I did things that didn't make sense.
Yeah.
And to let people know that I was not afraid.
Yeah.
Because what you gonna do?
Yeah.
Send me home?
Right.
And home was prison at the time.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So when I would come out here, there was no rules. It was like, I didn't care who you were. If you disrespected me, now I'm living and operating by prison rules.
Yeah.
Out here. And so I'm, you say the wrong thing, I'm hitting you.
Right.
Because I don't know how you're going to come at me because I've been beaten, I've been stabbed, I've been, all of these things.
Yeah.
And so it was really difficult for me. And for a long time, I thought that this would be the rest of my life.
Yeah.
At the age of 46, which was 2006, I was 46 years old. They gave me a 25-year prison sentence, which for me was like a death sentence. Because at 46, and you're giving me 25 years, I ain't never coming home. So I was off the hook. You know what I mean? That first year of that bit, and that was my last bit. I didn't care about nothing, but that was also when I found God.
When did you, great segue there, when did you come out of survival mode and say, okay, let me go from this Richard to this Richard? Like, when did you switch?
It was that when they gave me the 25 years, and I realized that I would probably die in prison.
Yeah.
That was the epiphany for me. I realized that life was just about over. Yeah. And I had tried everything. you have to also understand, inside,
Mm-hmm.
I was still a kid.
Yeah.
You know, I'm 46, but I'm still a kid because
Yeah.
I'm in arrested development.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I had never had an opportunity to grow, mature, and you know what I mean,
Yeah.
mentally and all of that.
Yeah.
I was always in survival mode.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I did in 2007, and so like I said, for that first year, 2006, I was angry.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was angry before,
Yeah.
violent,
Yeah.
but now I was angry at me inside.
Yeah.
I was
Sad?
hurting. I was hurting,
Yeah.
that kind of angry.
Yeah.
And I was like, so I had this conversation with God, and I was like, so this is what you made me for?
Mm-hmm.
To be a ping pong ball in prison?
Yeah.
This is what my life is supposed to be?
Right. Right.
I said, I know that I've done bad things,
Mm-hmm.
but I know that in my heart, I'm a good person.
Right.
And so, can you help me here?
Yeah.
So I got out on my knees
Yeah.
in my cell,
Mm-hmm.
and I had me a real, real good cry.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, listen, I don't know what you have in store for me, but I hope that this is not it.
Yeah.
If you give me the opportunity, I promise you that I will change my life and I will never look back.
Yeah.
And, sometimes we say stuff and we mean it kinda,
Mm-hmm.
and we kinda don't.
Yeah.
But God always knows when you really mean it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I meant it.
Yeah.
I was
had
coming
enough.
from a point of just personal pain that
Yeah.
pain the likes of what I keep trying to tell a lot of people. They don't really get how hurt and broken that I was.
Mm-hmm.
When you live in survival mode over and over, constantly, and this is not the life you want,
Right.
but this is the only life that you can survive.
Yeah.
You got to do what you got to do. So
That's what I was gonna ask you. So I'm happy that you at least said that. Was it a lifestyle that you feel like you wanted, or a lifestyle you were put into based off circumstance?
it was based upon, and it's easy for me to say it was circumstances,
Mm-hmm.
but as I've matured,
Mm-hmm.
I have to take ownership
Yeah.
of the things that I did
Mm-hmm.
to put myself in that position, to whereas now I had to go into survival mode.
Yeah.
So it was on me,
Yeah.
but back then, of course, it was like, well, it was this and it was that, and you know
Yeah.
how we point fingers,
Yeah.
and we try to have excuses.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is now I'm comfortable
Yeah.
being able to say that I did a lot of bad things,
Mm-hmm.
and so I put myself in a position to where I needed to be a better man.
Yeah.
You know.
So in life, we often go through hardship, negativity. We come up with just different ideas of who we are versus who we really are. And it seemed like something switched.
Yes, and
For
you
you.
know, I thought about how my mother used to drag us, me and my sisters, to church
Mhm.
all the time, and that was what I kind of came back to. That's how I got back to that religious aspect.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you know, there's got to be something better than this.
Yeah.
And then I got on my knees and, you know, said my prayers, and I was like, look, man, and I talked to God just like I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, hey,
Yeah.
man, you know, I don't know what you think of me. I don't know, I don't know you.
Yeah.
I said, but if you give me this opportunity, I promise you that I will do the right things, and I will be, because you have to also understand, this was 2007.
Mm-hmm.
I still had 10, 15 years in front of me.
Yeah.
So, and I think that was a good thing,
Mm-hmm.
because I had an opportunity to show God
Yeah.
that I was serious.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, oh, if you fix this for me and let me go tomorrow,
Mhm.
I'll be good.
Mhm.
And then get out there and be crazy
Yeah.
again, you know. But now I'm 46, 47 years old. And I was like, look, you know, if you just give me another opportunity, just one more chance,
Yeah.
I promise you that I'll be the person. And finally, I think that he was waiting to believe me.
Right.
You know what I mean? And he did. But then that didn't open no door for me.
Mm-hmm.
I still had to do the time.
So what did you do to change yourself on the inside before you ever made it out here?
So I started reading the Bible.
Okay.
A lot of folks, you know, they're like, oh, here he go with the God thumping thing.
Okay.
But it wasn't that for me.
Mhm.
It was like I started reading the Bible. And it's not that I hadn't read the Bible before.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't understand, like, okay, so how does God speak to people?
Mm-hmm.
How, you know what I mean? How does this religious thing work, you
Yeah.
know? And so one day, I was sitting, and what I was doing, I would isolate myself.
Okay.
And I would sit in a corner. And I, you know, because I didn't deal with a lot of folks, you know, I would read my Bible. And one day a guy came up to me and said, "What you doing, man?"
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Reading the Bible." It's like, "So how's that going to work for you?"
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Well, it's working, you know." But I was really still in the process of trying to understand, you know, how the Bible works, how God works.
Yeah.
And so he sat down. He asked me, could he sit down? I was like, sure, go ahead, you know. And we had a conversation, and we started talking about the Bible.
Okay.
And I could tell that people were kind of shocked because I was such a loner that they were surprised to see me talking with anybody,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so we kind of started making a day of it every day at a certain time that we would sit and we would just talk about what I had read in the Bible. Well, one day, he asked me, you know, how does God speak to you? And I was trying to explain that.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't. I didn't know how.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because until that time, I never really thought about it in depth. So the next day, when I was there by myself, I was looking at the Bible. And I was in a certain place of my reading. I said, I wonder what, you have to understand there was a lot going on in my life and being incarcerated, a lot of things going on, a lot of issues and problems and stuff.
Yeah.
And so on this particular day, instead of going to where I normally read the Bible, I just grabbed it and I opened it. And right there in front of me, I started reading.
Mm-hmm.
And amazingly, what I was reading was talking about the very things I was going through at that time. And that's when the epiphany hit that that's how he speaks to you.
Yeah.
And so now, after that, of course, I had continued my reading, but every day I would just open it, and I'm telling you,
Mm-hmm. It was for you.
it was for me.
Yeah.
And I was like, you gotta be kidding me.
Yeah.
And I started doing it on a regular basis, and it was like, this is how I got into my religious spirituality, because it gave me an understanding that everything I need is right here. It's just a matter of, am I in tune with it?
Right.
You know what I mean? Am I ready to receive the word?
it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
as I began to do that, it started taking me out of survival mode.
Okay.
And I began to be just in me mode.
Okay. So
You know what I
there's
mean?
the shift
It was a shift, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Yeah.
it was the shift happened while I was incarcerated.
Okay.
It didn't happen when I got out.
Mm-hmm.
I made a shift while I was there. And after a while, me and the other guy
Mm-hmm.
became a whole Bible study group.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, as I began to put one foot in front of the other and be this spiritual person, of course, I became the spokesperson for the dorm.
Mm-hmm.
The dorm representative is what it's called, dorm
Mm-hmm.
rep. And of course, I could always articulate. I was always fairly intelligent, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So I was able to mediate issues with the guards as well as the inmates, what have you, you know. And I became known as, you know, dude is fair, dude is a good dude, you know what I mean, da-da-da, you know. And so my case manager we used to have really in-depth intellectual discussions about crime and punishment,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And for those who didn't know anything about the 13th Amendment, where Ava DuVernay did the 13th Amendment and showed people that the way people are kept as slaves
Mm-hmm.
is by incarcerating them,
Mm-hmm.
because you lose all of your rights by
Right.
becoming incarcerated.
Right.
And you know, I used to talk to people about, you know, do you understand that because we have been incarcerated that we are allowing ourselves to remain in slavery and bondage?
Right.
You know, and so I started having these intellectual conversations with these, you know, my fellow inmates, you know, and we would gather around and people were like, who's this dude and what is he talking about? And I mean, people started gravitating towards me and following me.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, it wasn't the thug stature that was growing. It was like, this guy,
Yeah.
who is this guy? You know, we used to have conversations that were so powerful. by being the dorm rep, I had an opportunity to be the only person that was able to be standing up during count time.
Mm-hmm.
Count time is where everybody's on their bunk and nobody's allowed to be off their bunk except me.
Yeah.
And they come in and they count da da da. Well, during this time, I started talking
Mm-hmm.
to people, and I was like, if you can hear the sound of my voice, you're in the wrong place. If you love your children and you can hear the sound of my voice, you're in the wrong place.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all running around here talking about how much you love your kids and how
Right.
much you love your mom. But if you can hear the sound of my voice, that's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're here with me
Right.
and you're not out there with them. I said, at some point we have to come to the understanding and the recognition that we need to be out there with our children. We need to be out there with our families. We need to be out there taking care of our moms. You know what I mean? And so at count time every day, I began to have speeches,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and talking. And it was just really just, you know, everybody knew me, so they was comfortable.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was like, man, dude put knowledge on our head, man.
Yeah.
You know, he, that wisdom, you know, da da da, you know.
And you're so transparent.
You know, it's just.
You don't hide it.
Exactly.
You be like, look, so then this happened.
That's right.
And then
that's
this
right.
happened. And that's when I did that.
And look, I don't have no problem saying I got banged up. You know, because that is how I built trust.
Yeah.
With them, and it's still how today, even today, in things that I do with my young people, they love me because I'm so transparent, and I gain their trust by being honest.
Right.
You know, and
so with the changed mind, when you got out, what did you do?
So
like officially out.
So while I was there,
Yeah.
I got an associate's degree from Indiana State University.
Okay.
I got another associate's degree from Ball State.
Okay.
Was 3 classes away from getting my bachelor's degree when they took college out of prison.
Wow.
Across the country. Okay. But I wasn't worried about it because I was this changed person.
Right.
And I'm writing essays and all kinds of stuff. You know, I'm like, when I hit the ground, I'm going to hit the ground running, you know, da da da. So when I came home in 2014, Valentine's Day, I was released. And I said, you know, I'm going to make my mark. Thank you, God, you know, for sparing me, da da da, woo woo. And immediately, things changed. It got ugly.
Okay.
Every door I went to, no, slammed in my face. They talking about reentry program. No, you can't, no, we don't. And I was like, what? So now I'm at home. Now you gotta understand, like I told you earlier, I've been with my girl for, at this point, 30 years. But back then, you know, we were still, she'd been ride or die all the way through. She was the only one that I could pick up the phone and da da da. I'm talking about visiting every 2 weeks. I'm talking about, you know, she was a rider for real. And she worked 2 jobs to make sure that, you know, she knew I was in the streets hustling. And so the few times while I was out, you know, I was out there doing my wrong in the streets, and I'm bringing home money. Hold that, I'm back. I'm in the street. Hold that, I'm back. You know what I mean? So I was always a provider that way. Yeah. But the cost of it, I kept leaving her. But she was like, don't worry about it. I'll be here. You know, worked 2 jobs the whole time. I'm telling you, you know, it's like the one thing that God has truly blessed me with is good women. Yeah. And I'm talking about, like, there have been, like, maybe that I could speak of 3 women in my life that have shaped and molded me. You know, the mother of my children, the woman I'm with now, and of course, you know, my first love, you know what I mean? And so it's just been phenomenal how, as I look back on my life, that those women, and that's one of the things that I also am moving towards now, is starting to, when I get an opportunity to have the type of platforms that I have, I always want to honor our Black women, because without them, I would not be who I am. Woo! Because Dad was not there. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so all of these women, these Black queens that are out here raising these kings,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, not knowing what to do, how to deal with them, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
and doing the best they can,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, and then people want to, you know, dump on them like, your kid is bad, your kid is this, that, and the other, you know, and it's like, y'all don't understand. You know, a black man gonna do what a black man gonna do.
Right.
And there's really, at a certain age, after a certain age, you can't tell me nothing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? There's nothing you can tell me, but as we mature and we grow, we begin to understand, and we start looking back to where we came from and how we became to be who we are.
Yeah.
My mom was there.
Mm-hmm.
My sisters were there.
Yeah.
You know, I was surrounded by women.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So, you know, every opportunity that I get, I try to shout out to my black women, you know, how much I appreciate them and how much I appreciate all the wisdom that they have poured into me that have made me the man that I am, you know. A lot of people like, man, you're a good brother, I'd like my son to be like you, you know. And I'm like, you know, listen to your mama.
Mm-hmm.
You know, don't think that some man, you know, don't get me wrong. I think that men have to relate to other men and to uplift our young African American males, which is what I'm trying to do now.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, there's so much wisdom that we can glean from watching our black queens work.
Tell people what you've done with your story and what you do now.
Oh, that's because I went off into the queen thing because of my girl.
Yeah.
You know, because she's working 2 jobs.
Yeah.
So she's leaving at 6 in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
coming home at 5 for half an hour, and then going in for a 6 to 10 shift as
Mm-hmm.
well. And when she was coming home, because I was getting doors slammed in my face, I'm on the couch in the same position when she comes home at 5 that I was in when she left at 6 in the morning.
Mm.
And she was like, you know, so what you gonna do?
Right.
You know, you was telling me all this stuff while you was locked up that you was gonna come out here and try to do this, that, and the other. Because of course, while you're incarcerated, you're thinking, if I could just get a chance to get out there, I can make people, you know, understand me and you know. And she's like, well, what you gonna do? And I was like, well, baby, I'm out here trying. She's like, I know you're trying, but sometimes trying enough.
Mm-hmm.
You got to do something.
Yeah.
Because I'm tired of carrying us.
Right.
You know, I've been carrying us all this time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, okay, it'll be okay. I said, you know, I can always go get that thing. And she's like, I thought you changed.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, yeah, I'm just playing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I said, I'm gonna get it together. I'm going out here. So I ended up going over to Marion County Health Department on 30th and Rural. Not the big building, but the little med check place. Okay. And I worked for an organization called Clean Source. Took a job as a janitor. And I was not happy. And it was only part-time, you know, but it was the only job that would hire me because of my felony records and, you know, my lengthy criminal history.
Yeah.
I ended up taking the job more so to please her than for me, you know. And so she was just so ecstatic, you know, that I got a job. And, you know, I was like, well, it ain't but 4 hours, you know. And so I did that for probably about 6 to 8 months. I wasn't making a whole lot of money, but I was steady putting in applications in other places and all of that. The one thing that I did learn to do well in prison was sling a mop, you know. One of the other accomplishments, I did 5 years as a paralegal. I did a DOL program, Department of Labor, where, you know, to get certified as a janitor, basically. And so when I got that job, which is the DOL program was the reason that I got the job, I'm slinging this mop, and I'm in the men's bathroom. And I'm slinging this mop back and forth. And the mop got away from me and it slipped out of my hand. And so I went and got the mop, and I bent down and picked it up. And when I stood up, I was looking in, you know, in the men's bathroom, they got these big mirrors, you know. And I stood up and I was looking in the mirror and I was holding this mop. And I was like, I have a bachelor's degree.
Mm-hmm.
I have 2 associate's degrees, separate.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a mop in my hand. And I was like, really, God? This what we own? You know? And that night I quit. And that was the hardest thing for me to do because I was worried about letting her down.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she had showered me with so much love and caring and stayed with me for so long through it all.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I was letting her down, you know. And I knew that I had to tell her, you know, when I got home that I had quit, you know. So when she came in, I was like, you know, I quit my job today. And she looked at me, she said, so what now? And I said, well, I'll be okay. We'll be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, okay. You know, that was a defining moment for me because even though she stayed with me all that time,
Mm-hmm.
that was when I realized she truly believed in me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She didn't give me no argument. She
Mm-hmm.
didn't give me no, she was like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I said, I don't know how. She's like, don't worry about it. She said, I believe in you. We're going to make it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay. And that is what now that drives me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like everything that I do, it's like, you know, I got to make sure this works. I got to do this the right way.
Yeah.
You know, my mentality has changed so much that, you know, I drive down the street. Now, don't get me wrong. The criminal is still here.
Mm-hmm.
The monster is still here. And that's what I try to explain people. He didn't go nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get it twisted.
Mm-hmm.
Because some people have gotten it twisted.
Yeah.
And I've had to go in here
Mm-hmm.
and use this key ring that I have and unlock this cage and said, they don't understand.
Yeah.
And let that guy come out.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're like, oh. Like, yeah.
You're right.
So then I lock him back up.
Yeah.
That's where the difference in me now is that I can control the monster.
Yeah.
I can control the criminal.
Mm-hmm.
Because don't you think that I ain't driving around the city and I'm looking and I'm seeing licks. You know, I'm like, oh, y'all left this in out there? Do y'all understand that stuff can be disappeared? You know, but then my right mind comes back and is like, no, you know, that ain't me no more. You know what I mean? But now, what I have done, I started an organization called Growing Indie.
Mm-hmm.
The organization's mission statement is to provide information, education, resources, and training to individuals and communities in various stages of reentry, recovery, and rebuilding.
Mm-hmm.
I was also a drug addict for 12 of those years that I was crazy. Mm-hmm. And that fueled a lot of my craziness. Mm-hmm. Smoking crack, I mean, the whole, weed, everything, you know. Mm-hmm. I was out there. Started my little business. And of course, you know, didn't nobody care about, you know, me and what I was doing, but I was determined to help other people. Mm-hmm. I got hooked up with the MCRC, Marion County Reentry Coalition, mm-hmm. Because one day me and my girl were sitting and watching TV and we saw Vop Osili on TV narrating a group of people. And I was like, what are they doing? They're supposed to be talking about reentry and, you know, da-da-da. And I was like, they're asking the wrong questions. Mm-hmm. She said, well, you need to go down there and tell them what they need to be saying. Mm-hmm. And I was like, for real? She was like, yeah. You still here? Yeah. I was like, okay. So I went down to, this is when they moved police headquarters on Shadeland, down there where the old shopping center used to be. I forget what they call it down there. On like, what is it, 12th and Shadeland.
Oh, okay.
And that's their headquarters now. So I go down there and I sought Vop out and I said, excuse me, do you think that I could have a few minutes to say something? Mm-hmm. He was like, who are you? And I was like, well, you know, I'm somebody that just recently got out and, you know, it seems like you guys are asking the wrong questions.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to get answers about why we do the things we do as criminals, and you're asking the wrong questions. He said, so what you gonna say? I can't just give you a microphone and you just go up there and say some craziness, you know? And I said, well, I promise I'm not gonna say anything out of the way if you just give me a few minutes, and you can shut it down at any time. And he said, I'm gonna give you a shot.
Mm-hmm.
So he gave me the microphone, and I haven't looked back since. You know, he gave me the microphone. I talked about, you know, some of the disparities that were happening, and you know, why a lot of our young people were doing the things that they were doing out here. And he was like, So he put me in touch with April Angermeyer, who at that time was the secretary for the MCRC, and I got to know a lot of the people that were in there, and started developing. I was doing something called networking, which I didn't really know what that meant at the time. And you know, things started moving along, and then somebody called me and asked me to be on a radio show.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I don't know nothing about no radio, you know. And they was like, yeah, just, you know. And so the guy's name was Harold Bell.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he said, you know, I heard your story from somebody, and I'd like for you to be on my show. And I was like, And so he said, I tell you what, he said, just come down on Mondays, and you and I will meet, and we'll just talk. And you don't have to do nothing, be on no show or nothing. I was like, okay. And so every Monday, I would go down and we would talk about, you know, my time in prison and the things that I'd learned and all of that. He said, man, you can't just keep this from the community, man. I said, you know, you got a lot of knowledge, bro. You know, you need to share that with the show. And I was like, man, I can't afford no show. He said, I tell you what, we're looking for somebody to do a radio show about reentry. Why don't you just do a pilot one time and see how it goes? I was like, okay. So of course I wasn't okay instantly. It was okay, maybe. Then it was okay like 2 months later.
Mm-hmm.
I finally, you know, geeked myself up to go ahead and do it, because I didn't know anything about radio, you know. And I did it, and afterwards the phones just went crazy, you know. And he was like, "Who's this dude? And where is he at? And why ain't he doing this? And da da da." And so he said, "Man, you gotta have your show. You gotta have a show of your own." And I was like, "Man." He's like, "Man, just try it for a while, you know." And so that's where the Growing Indie Reentry Radio Show was born, and that's when I met you, and you know, doing my 10 to 12, 12 to 2 radio show every Monday, you know, and it's began to thrive, and that's the one thing that I have to say, which is why I have to give Harold Bell props, is because he gave me a platform. Where I began to meet. This is where I met Mila Eldridge, our Marion County clerk. This is where I met a lot of our political people who would come on my show and talk about the reentry situations. Lena Hackett of Community Solutions. I mean, I could just go down a list of just names of people that I've met that are in politics, that are in the city, that are now on speed dial on my phone. You know what I mean? People that, you know, I knew Mayor Hogstead before he became the mayor. You and I met the police chief, Randy Taylor, who now is like, when I can just pick up the phone and say, hey, you know, I mean, it's just amazing how all of those careers and things have come together. So now I have 4 businesses. I have the Growing Indie LLC for profit. I have a business called the Growing Indie Group, which is the one I'm most proud of. It's my not-for-profit, who my board of directors are who's who of the city of Indianapolis. I have a Donita Smith Foster, who is each one of the people that I'm about to mention wear 2 hats. One of their hats is with me, the Growing Indie Group, and the other hat is what they do in the city. Donita Smith Foster of Vision Wealth Group, Ann DeSisti of CareSource, Chris Simmons of Indie Reads, Mila Eldridge, of course, Marion County Clerk, Julie Fiddler, who is with the Waters Community Center, Conflict Mediation, Conflict Resolution, Cynthia Taylor, who is my compliance officer. Just all of these great people, Icy Hinton, who is my treasurer, just all of these individuals, Sharday Hoskins, Shauna Majors, the violence reduction team, all of these people are doing great things in the city of Indianapolis, but they've decided to follow me. And that is just something that warms my heart. and it is a testament to what God can do in someone's life if you let him, you know, and that's where I am now with that. I deliver food for Gleaners through Cafe. I go and pick up on Mondays from Cafe, then I go pick up from Groundworks Indy on Wednesdays. And we go to the most violent neighborhoods in the city of Indianapolis. Wherever there's been a shooting, where the guy killed his entire family, we went out there. When they had the police standoff on 36 and Adams, where they shot the guy from domestic violence, we went out there. Because what people don't understand is a lot of times when violence is happening in the community, that does not mean that there's not a need. You know, we have places like Urban League, we have places like Gleaners, we have places that are trying to deal with the food deserts here in Indianapolis. However, people that are in these other disparaging neighborhoods don't have transportation to get to the food, and so therefore we deliver it to them. I'm also a recovery coach, working with DMHA, which is a division of Mental Health America, and I am a recovery coach, a trainer of trainers. I've just been so blessed in so many different areas. I go into the prisons. Well, before COVID, I was going into the places that I was locked up in, Pendleton and all of these places, teaching, getting ahead while getting out, trying to get people prepared to come home so that when they did come home, they would not suffer. This is where Growing Indy was born, because I wanted to raise the consciousness of the city of Indianapolis in the plight that people who were coming out of incarceration and going into reentry, to paint a picture of what was really happening.
Right.
You know, so.
Well, I'm so thankful for a few things. For you just going on the journey that you have, learning all that you did to make you who you are today. I'm so happy that we crossed paths.
Absolutely.
5 years ago,
yes.
you know.
Yes. And we were a talented group.
Yes. And we're going to continue to do great things. And I'm just so thankful to have you here today to share your story. I really appreciate you for doing
I really appreciate being here. I'm looking forward to whatever collaborations that you have in mind. You know, we're doing great things in the city now. Of course, we're still delivering food. Of course, we do the Christmas drives, we do the Thanksgiving stuff. You know, we hit all the major holidays, and so I'm just so happy to reunite with you,
absolutely,
Ms. Moi, and really know that our journey is just going to get better.
Absolutely,
because with the clout that you've developed with developing, and I've watched you develop Lipstick Entertainment, from the ground up, you know what I mean, and have been there to support you all the way, you know what I mean. Of course, we lost touch for a minute, but the bottom line is I knew my girl's out there doing her thing, you know what I mean. So, I've met so many wonderful people, so I look forward to sharing them with you as well.
Awesome. Well, I thank you all so much for being here and being a part of the conversation. I'll see you guys tomorrow as I have another conversation. Have a great evening.